Hi, I'm Eric from Stinger. Today we've got this awesome Challenger in the bay, so I can show you how easily you can upgrade your Challenger with the Horizon 10. We're going to be using our plug-and-play installation and integration kit, which is compatible with 2015 to 23 Challenger and takes this 10-inch HD touchscreen display and mounts it right in the dash. It also connects to the vehicle's CAN bus with plug-and-play connectors, so it's going to give us awesome CAN bus-driven gauges, as well as the wireless connectivity of wireless CarPlay and Android Auto, along with tons of other awesome features. So let's go ahead and get started with the install so I can show you how easy it is to upgrade your vehicle.
The tools we're going to use in this installation are a drill with a Phillips bit, an 8mm socket, 10mm socket, pick tool, flathead screwdriver, nylon pry tool, flush cuts, razor knife, some zip ties, and a long zip tie. We're going to begin by removing the plastic trim panel around the gauge cluster. Using a pry tool, carefully pry along the edge while pulling the panel forward. Now we can remove the 4 Phillips screws securing the factory radio into the dash. Then pull the radio out of the dash and disconnect the harnesses plugged into the back by pressing in on their latch tabs and pulling them away from the radio. The main harness has a locking latch tab. Press in on the end and rotate the lever up to remove the connector. Now we'll want to remove the trim panel from the side of the dash. Using a pry tool at the bottom edge or furthest forward edge, gently pry the panel out toward the outside of the vehicle. Now we want to remove the 2 Phillips screws from the side of the lower dash panel. The top screw is easily accessible. You may find it helpful to remove the upper and lower door opening trim panels to access the lower screw. Now remove this screw using a short Phillips screwdriver. Now we can drop the lower dash panel. You may find this easier to do from the driver's seat. Disconnect the harnesses plugged into the controls on the panel. Some of the harnesses may have locking tabs. You have to slide out with the pick tool before you can remove the connector. Find the CAN bus connection T-harness. We're going to use the green connector and plug it into the white CAN bus connector in the vehicle located here in the dash. Simply plug the green connector into any open port. Using a long zip tie, route the cable behind the dash to the radio opening. Then continue routing from the radio opening to the glove box area. At this point, if you want to save yourself some vehicle disassembly, you can remove 3 tree fasteners from the panel below the glove box, reach up behind the glove box and plug in the connector. We're going to show you how to access this connector by removing the glove box. First, we open the glove box. On the far right side, there's a tensioner cable that helps the glove box open slowly. We need to use a pry tool to slide it downward into the keyhole so it can be removed from the glove box door. Now, while pressing in on the stopper on the side, pull the glove box door forward. Repeat this process on the other side, then rotate the glove box door down so you can unclip it and remove it. Now we can remove the 6 Phillips screws securing the glove box into the dash. We need to remove the upper trim panel from the side of the dash, and also the upper and lower door opening trim panels. This gives us access to the 2 Phillips screws on the side. Once we remove these, we can remove the glove box from the dash. Continue routing the CAN bus connector to the glove box area. Then plug the white connector into any open port in the green CAN bus module. Then reinstall the glove box. The 2 Phillips screws on the side, and the 6 Phillips screws that secure the glove box into position. Also reinstall the door trim panels and the panel on the side of the dash. Align the lower edge of the glove box into the dash and snap it into position. Then roll it upward. Now find that small plastic slow opening gimmick on the end of the string inside the dash. Pull it back, slide it into the keyhole and upward to engage it. Open and close the glove box to ensure that the cable has been connected properly. Remove the small rubber tray next to the shifter. Now we're going to pry up on the trim panel around the shifter and separate it from the large trim panel using a pry tool. Carefully pry upward, working your way around the side of the trim panel. You can reach inside the pocket and lift up on the shifter trim panel while prying up to help remove it. Unplug the connector on the back side of the panel. There's a small latch tab, which you may need a tool to press. Then, using a T15 Torx bit, back out the shift lever lock screw. Be careful not to lose it. Then, by pressing in on the lever on the side of the shifter, you can remove the shifter from the vehicle. Ideally, we'll keep the screw in the shifter. Next, we're going to remove this entire center console trim panel. By reaching inside the cup holder or the shifter area, you can grab the very top trim panel and pry upward while gently prying around the outside edge with a pry tool. Start near the rear of the vehicle and work your way toward the front of the vehicle. The last two clips can be disengaged by pulling the panel toward the rear of the vehicle. Be sure to disconnect the connector on the back of this panel. Now disconnect the USB harness and the large 52-pin connector inside the center console. Then remove the two Phillips screws at the very front. Using an 8mm socket, remove the two bolts securing the manual park release lever into position. Slide the seat to the furthest forward position to gain access to this small panel. Remove the panel. Now we can remove the 10mm bolt. Then repeat this process on the other side of the center console. Now we should be able to remove the center console from the vehicle and take it over to the bench. Notice that one end of the media hub has an alignment tab. This is on the front and back pieces, so we can use this as a reference so we know how to align the pieces. Notice that all the connectors have a key mark on one side where they're flat on the other. Use this as a reference when installing your cables. Before we install any cables, let's remove the rubber protectors from inside the connectors. This can be done using a razor knife or a pick tool. Now we're going to assemble the cables into the media hub. Let's start with the HDMI cable. Install the female end into the hub, being sure to notice the orientation of the key mark. In this case, we have it down. With the back panel in the proper orientation, slide the cable through the groove that lines up with the back of the connector. Next, we can install the 3.5mm aux cable port. Again, ensure that the key mark orientation is the same, in this case down. Slide it into position, then slide the cable through the channel on the back panel. Now do the same with the USB-C connector. And finally, the USB-A connector. With all the cables installed, we can slide them back into the back panel and slide the whole panel into the front panel assembly, ensuring proper alignment of the tab on the side. One by one, slide the cables forward into the front panel, then snap the back panel into position. We need to remove the connectors on the back of the factory USB hub in the center console. You may find it easier to do this with a long flathead screwdriver. We also need to release the 4 latch tabs, 2 on each side of the USB hub. Pressing on the back of the USB hub while using a screwdriver to press the side tabs inward will allow you to release the hub. Now if we flip the whole center console over, we can actually remove the hub, pass all the cables from the assembled media hub through the opening in the center console. Align the notch on the media hub with the notch in the center console and slide the hub into place. Now if we flip the console over, we can route the wires that we added along the factory wiring path, securing them to the factory wiring with zip ties, then trimming off the excess of the zip ties. Locate the main vehicle harness and the 2 small adapter harnesses. We're going to use the adapter with the larger black connector. The adapter harness with the small black connector will not be used. Plug in the 3 mating connectors from the adapter harness to the main vehicle harness. The small 3-pin connector labeled Pack Link plugs into the small connector on the Pack Link module. The 10-pin to 10-pin harness is the same on both ends. Plug either end into either of the larger connectors on the Pack Link. Now locate the radio replacement module. Plug the radio harness into the port labeled Radio Harness. Plug in the 3-pin power connector. Plug in the 16-pin vehicle harness into the port labeled Vehicle Harness. The 8-pin audio harness has 2 ports that it can be plugged into. If your vehicle is non-amplified, plug into the port labeled Non-Amplified. If your Challenger is equipped with a factory amplified audio system, plug into the port labeled Amplified. There's a port labeled Expansion port. This is where we want to plug in the other end of the 10-pin cable that we plugged into the Pack Link. Keep track of this small 2-pin connector. We'll want to plug the Chime speaker in here when we get into the vehicle. Locate the small 6-pin connector near the vehicle plug on the harness. Find the small heat shrink adapter labeled RPA VA1. Plug the 6-pin connector into this module. Red and black accessory power connections are provided if you're looking to add additional cameras or lighting products to your vehicle. The blue wire with the white stripe is a remote turn-on, which can be used if you're adding aftermarket amplifiers to the vehicle. There's a blue wire which provides power to the amplified antenna adapter. Connect this wire to your powered antenna adapter in the vehicle. Connect the yellow RCA labeled Reverse Cam into the yellow cable labeled Reverse Camera Input on the camera input harness. Here we see a 3.5mm connector for the external mic. Pass a zip tie through the channel on the back of the Pack Link module and zip tie it to the vehicle harness. Now we're ready to assemble the side brackets and spacers. Notice that the side brackets are labeled LH for left hand and RH for right hand. The side brackets have holes that are numbered. We're going to be installing the spacers into positions numbered 3. Install this spacer on the inside of the side bracket. Then repeat this process with the other side bracket and spacer. Now locate the two pieces of the mounting bucket. Notice it is also labeled with LH and RH like the side brackets. Align bucket 1 and bucket 2 so they snap together. Then drop in 4 number 8 by 1/2 inch Phillips screws. Gently shaking the assembly around will allow the screws to fall into position. Now tighten the screws with a Phillips screwdriver. If we flip the assembly on its side, we can align the spacer on the bracket with position F. Then install 2 number 8 by 3/4 inch Phillips screws. Flip the whole assembly over and repeat this process on the other side. Using 2 of the supplied zip ties, pass them through the mounting anchors in the mounting bucket. Then pass them through 2 of the holes on the mounting tabs on the side of the Radio Pro module. Start the zip ties, but don't pull out all the slack at this time. Then if we spin this whole assembly around, we can install the other 2 zip ties through the other 2 mounting anchors in the bucket, and repeat the process through the other mounting tab on the Radio Pro module. Then remove the slack of all 4 zip ties, securing the module to the bracket. Then trim off the excess of the zip ties. Tuck the vehicle harness into the bucket next to the Radio Pro module. The display connection cable is the same on both ends. Plug either end into the port on the back of the radio module. Now position the radio module between the 2 side brackets and align the mounting holes. Insert 2 of the M5x10 screws and tighten them with a Phillips driver. Now we can flip the whole assembly over and repeat this process with the other 2 screws on the other side bracket. Connect the main harness into the radio module. Install the camera input harness into the port labeled AV in. This harness with all the RCA pre-outs is used for adding aftermarket amplifiers. Connect this into the port labeled pre-out. This data connection cable has a 4-pin plug that allows us to connect and control Stinger and Lighten lighting products. Plug this into the port labeled data. Now we want to remove the 2 half-moon shaped pieces of plastic from the inner opening of the display mounting bucket. Trim these using flush cuts, then use a razor knife to ensure they are flush. Be sure to install 6 rubber plugs into the innermost mounting holes on the back of the display. A Chime speaker is provided and has several ways of being mounted inside the dash. Find a suitable mounting location. Route the 2-pin plug behind the dash to the radio opening. Double-sided tape is provided and can be used to attach the bracket to a panel. 2 bolts and wing nuts are also provided which can go through the bracket and secure it to a panel. Or you can simply zip tie the bracket to some of the wiring behind the dash. Reconnect the connectors on the back of the lower dash panel. Then move this panel back into position and snap it into place. Now we can reinstall the 2 screws securing this panel to the dash, along with the door opening trim panels that we removed earlier, starting with the lower one, then installing the upper. Installing the windscreen onto the microphone will help reduce wind noise. The optional external microphone has 2 mounting options. One is a clip-based, the other is adhesive-based. Choose one for your vehicle. It can either be clipped to the top of the A-pillar or attached to the windshield or A-pillar plastic. Then using a pry tool, carefully route the cable behind the A-pillar trim panel. Route it down the weather stripping to the side of the dash. Using a long zip tie, route the microphone cable through the dash behind the gauge cluster to the radio opening. Locate the square metal plate and the GPS antenna. Remove the adhesive backing from the metal plate and place it on top of the passenger side air vent in the dash. Then place the GPS antenna on top of this metal plate. Now we can carefully bring the center console back into the vehicle, ensuring that we keep track of the cables we installed. Route all the cables up through the opening in front of the center console to the radio opening. When sliding the center console forward into position, grab the manual park override lever and ensure that it's placed back into its proper position. Then reinstall the 2 8mm bolts that secure it into position. Reconnect the 2 harnesses at the front of the center console and reinstall the 2 Phillips screws. Reconnect the connector on the center console trim panel and begin plugging it back into position. Then reconnect the connector on the shift boot trim panel. Press the lever on the side to lower the shifter into position. Then tighten the T15 Torx screw. Snap the shifter boot trim panel back into position and drop the little rubber cup back into the pocket. If you're adding a Sirius XM tuner, plug the SAT02 adapter into the blue FACRA connector. We're not installing a Sirius tuner, so we're just going to tuck this back into the dash. You may find it helpful to put a towel down to protect the center console when bringing in the radio module. Take the excess of the GPS antenna cable and make it into large loops. Twist the loops into a figure 8 and fold it back onto itself. Now secure this ring with some zip ties. Then trim off the excess of the zip ties. We can tuck this into the dash, being sure that we leave the connector hanging out. Bring the radio assembly into the vehicle and verify the orientation by finding the LH and RH indicators. Ensure that the display cable is poking through the small square at the bottom of the assembly. We want a few inches of the cable hanging out for the display to be connected, but most of the cable is back behind the assembly. Now if we just roll the radio down toward the back of the vehicle, we can make all the connections. If you're connecting in light and lighting, connect the 4-pin module to this connector now. Connect the red, white, and yellow RCA cables we ran from the center console media hub into the harness labeled aux-in. Locate the small 2-pin plug from the Chime module and plug it into the 2-pin connector on the vehicle harness by the radio module. If connecting aftermarket amplifiers, plug the RCAs into the pre-outs at this point. Locate the 4-pin data connector and separate the two connectors that form a loop. Now locate the 4-pin cable we connected to the CAN bus earlier. Connect its 4-pin connector into the loop we just disconnected. Plug the AM/FM antenna adapter into the white FACRA connector. Then plug the other end into our radio module's antenna port. Plug the 3.5mm connector into the port labeled external mic. Connect the blue GPS antenna into the port labeled GPS. Locate the USB-C cable from the center console and plug it into the port labeled phone. Locate the HDMI cable from the center console and plug it into the port labeled HDMI. The USB-A connector from the center console can be connected into the USB port closest to the edge of the chassis of the radio module. If you're installing a Sirius XM tuner, which is sold separately, plug that tuner into this round port. Plug in the main vehicle harness and rotate the latch tab down to engage it. Begin tucking the excess cabling into the dash to the left and to the right as much as possible. Then work the radio assembly into the dash opening, being sure to leave the display cable hanging out of the dash. Once into position, reinstall the 4 Phillips screws. Now we can temporarily connect the LVDS display cable into the back of the display and turn the vehicle on to perform a functionality check. Verify that we have radio reception. Verify the steering wheel controls operate. Verify volume. And track. Ensure we have audio through the vehicle and that we're connected to the proper port on the radio module. We can also check the vehicle information screen. If the vehicle is running, we can check that the tachometer responds to the vehicle. And if we shift to reverse, we can verify that the factory backup camera displays on the Horizon 10 display. With the functionality check out of the way, we can turn off the car and remove the display. Carefully bring the gauge cluster trim panel back into position. Be sure to pull the display cable through the radio opening. Slide the display cable through the opening in the radio mounting bucket. These latch tabs align with the assembly in the dash. Temporarily attach the display mounting bucket to the dash. Plug the LVDS cable into the port on the back of the display. Run the cable through the split rubber ring at the other end. Align the tabs on the back of the LVDS cover with the notches on the display. Then slide it up into position. Using a small Phillips screwdriver, install the locking screw. Lower the display mounting bucket onto the back of the display and install the 4 Phillips screws. Carefully align the tabs and tuck the excess cable into the square hole in the radio assembly. Then slide the display into position. After sliding the display to the left, use a long-handled, magnetic-tipped Phillips screwdriver to install the locking screw on the right side of the display. This ensures that the display is locked into position. Reinstall the 10mm bolt and plastic cover panel on each side of the center console.
Well, that completes the installation of our Horizon 10 into our Dodge Challenger. We hope you found this video helpful. Visit stingersolutions.com for more information. Also, check out the feature video to see the Horizon 10 in action. Thanks for watching.